But first, to the story which has dominated headlines around the country and led to one of the ABC's top stars going on leave for months amid a backlash to the national broadcaster's coronation coverage.
Sometimes we need to just take time out. Sometimes our souls are hurting, and so it is for me. To those who have abused me and my family, I would just say, if your aim was to hurt me, well, you've succeeded. And I'm sorry. I'm sorry that I must have given you so much cause to hate me so much, to target me and my family, to make threats against me. I'm sorry.
It is hard to watch that segment and not feel sympathy for Stan Grant. No one should be subjected to abuse of a racial nature, and he was. You only had to read the comments under the ABC's own social media posts about Grant to see people wielding race as a weapon against him, suggesting abhorrent notions such as his skin not being dark enough to be a true Aboriginal. Or, as The Australian put it in this report, dozens of posts which are too offensive to publish were still live in the replies on at least 4 of the ABC's popular social media accounts on Wednesday morning. Now, that kind of discourse on social media is appalling, and one man has even been charged with making racially charged threats. But there is another side to this saga. In response to Grant's exit from Q&A, the ABC deployed an insidious media campaign to conflate those racist attacks against Grant with the legitimate news coverage of criticisms of the coronation broadcast. Here is ABC News Director Justin Stevens blaming this saga on journalists who wrote stories about the complaints.
Our history is not in dispute. And so he grounded everything he said very clearly in his own lived experience. And in future, I think we need to change our approach in regards to how we publicly call this stuff out when individuals who work at the ABC and do their job are subject to such vitriolic abuse. And there's another backdrop here. There's 2 layers to this. There's the vitriolic coverage that focuses and centres on the personality, the people doing their jobs. In this case, it was Stan Grant. At other times, it might be David Spears or Lee Sales or Lisa Miller or Tony Armstrong. And behind that is this discourse now on social media, which is toxic, racist, abhorrent, and coverage, which is vitriolic, which targets the personality, helps rev that up. And I think all media companies need to have a good hard look at how they approach that.
What a weasel of a man you are, Justin Stevens. His argument is that individuals who work at the ABC should be immune from criticism, particularly the highly paid celebrity presenters at the ABC. But if you are a young journalist at the start of your career and you wrote an accurate story about complaints, well, Stephen blames you. What do you think social media has been saying about those journalists since Justin gave that rant? We have to accept there is a difference between writing a critical media story and making a racist comment. Let me spell it out in plain language. It is not racist to disagree with Stan Grant's opinions. If the ABC is suggesting it will no longer report on people, if that report could lead to negative commentary, then they really have no clue about journalism. Someone tell that to Media Watch, which ABC host Paul Barry has used to personally smear journalists such as Shari Markson for years. Journalists are not immune from criticism, but for the ABC to pretend that it does not personally attack journalists it disagrees with is a complete fallacy. And there is another good point the ABC cannot seem to fathom about the need to separate opinion from news. This week, Interim Media Watch host John Barron called on the ABC to review this issue.
The ABC's managing director says there will now be a review of how the organisation responds to racism affecting its staff. And that's critical because Stan's role and identity has left him exposed and feeling unsupported. But perhaps the ABC should also review the way it encourages some of its star journalists to walk the impossible line between news, analysis and opinion, and whether that is in line with public expectations.
Stan Grant was walking that impossible line by being a firebrand opinion columnist for the ABC while needing to be objective on Q&A. If you are calling for radical changes to our political system in an opinion column, you are now an activist. ABC management seems to have completely ignored this valid criticism. And why wouldn't they? Look how easy it is to sweep a crisis under the rug by labelling your critics in the media as racist. Let's bring in tonight's panel, and I'm pleased to say I'm joined by broadcaster Kel Richards and media writer for The Australian, Sophie Ellsworth. Kel, let's start with you. It's been a massive week, and the ABC has been doing a lot of damage control, in my opinion. What do you make of how the story has played out?
When I heard Justin Stevens say that news coverage of what Stan Grant did, particularly on the coronation broadcast, was vitriolic, I just thought, Justin, you're an idiot. It wasn't vitriolic, it was news reporting, because Stan Grant got something wrong. And what he got wrong was he stopped being a publicly funded broadcaster, being paid by taxpayer dollars, and became an activist. Now, you've got to make up your mind. If you're going to work for the ABC, where all of the money comes from taxpayers, you've got to say, I can't be an activist. The two don't go together. You want to be an activist, Stan, go and work for Channel 7, Channel 9, whoever you like. But don't work for the ABC on our dollars and then become an activist. You can't do the two. Now, I've said before, when I joined the ABC, which admittedly was a long time ago, we were told not to express opinions. When the ABC decided it would allow its presenters to express an opinion, that was an utterly stupid decision from the top of the ABC. It is destroying the ABC, and you've got to go back to the old policy of when you're on the staff of the ABC, you do not express opinions. That's what you do when you're getting taxpayers' dollars. Otherwise, you don't take $1 billion from taxpayers. If you're getting their money, you don't sit there on coronation night and tell more than half the population, way over half the population who are really looking forward to the coronation, that you hate the British Crown and that everything that they ever did in the settlement of Australia was evil. Now, that's not what most Australians think, and it's not your job to be an activist. If you want to be an activist, Stan, look, we admire you as a journalist. I watched you for years reporting for CNN from Hong Kong. You're very good. So why, as a good journalist, do you suddenly decide you've got to be an activist? You can't combine the two, certainly not at the ABC. He got that wrong. Now, saying that is not being vitriolic. It is just saying you're on the taxpayer's dollar. Behave like it.
Well said. And Sophie, thank you for joining us. And what are your thoughts?
Well, Jack, I challenged the ABC management, including Justin Stevens, to name and point out one article that is racially motivated as a result of this fallout from the coronation coverage and the situation with Stan Grant's commentary. The argument from the beginning and the queries and the outrage right from the get-go was about the timing of this coronation coverage, the appropriateness of it. Why was the ABC broadcasting this 45-minute panel that was piling on the British monarchy, pointing out colonisation, pushing the Republican vote, and also pro-voice? The timing was wrong. Now, this is the questions that were raised right from the beginning. Justin Stevens failed miserably when he went on ABC Radio on Raf Epstein earlier this week and tried to blame News Corp for the fallout from what had occurred with Stan Grant and the situation on social media. Now, it appears, Jack, that the ABC have just woken up to what happens on social media, because this vitriol has been going on for as long as social media has been around. It's not a new thing, and they're trying to twist the situation with the coronation fallout, blame media outlets, and then have this protest that they had earlier in the week. So it's one big giant mess, Jack, and they need to look at themselves before they start blaming others for their downfalls.
Yeah, and Kel, to Sophie's point, Twitter, we've known for a very long time it's a sewer. It's particularly been a sewer for Conservative politicians. I want to get your reaction to these fireworks at Senate estimates, and also reaction to Peter Dutton's comments on this about the flack that they get when they appear on the ABC.
I went on ABC afternoon briefing yesterday to discuss trolling and then was heavily trolled last night. So clearly your viewers don't get irony. And somehow being referred to as Bronwyn Bishop, of which I've tried to emulate her hair in honour of today, but also Hitler, was a particularly delightful series of references last night after appearing on ABC briefing. Are you shocked by this, or is this a new phenomena because it's impacting people on the left now, not just people on the right?
When you promote someone like me going on Q&A,
we get hit with hundreds of the most disgusting, vile, defamatory comments. And I pleaded with you to turn your comments off because of what we were being subjected to, and you refused to do so.
In relation to Stan Grant, again, there'd be a lot that I don't agree with that Stan says, but he shouldn't have been treated the way that he was. Mm-hmm. I mean, you and I cop the vile abuse on social media every day, and you know, the ABC doesn't highlight that. So they are duplicitous.
Well, Kel, that's really interesting, isn't it, that Conservative politicians feel like they get abused and no one bats an eyelid. There's not memes floating around saying, I stand with Peter Dutton when he gets abused on social media. Is it, as Holly Hughes put it, that they're only now waking it up because the left is being abused in this case?
Maybe that's what's going on. I mean, I appeared as a panellist on The Drum only a couple of years ago. They didn't have me back again. I think I was far too conservative for them. But I immediately got flooded with absolutely vile, disgusting tweets. Gutter language. And the ABC appears to be happy for that to turn up on some of their websites as comments. So come on, fellas. You've known for years it was going on. And the ABC this time actually invited it, because what they did on the coronation coverage was intentional. It wasn't an accident. It was a decision by the producers. We will deliberately put on a panel with 3 Republicans and 1 monarchist in the lead up to the coronation. That was intentional. That was the ABC thumbing their nose at their viewers, saying our money is guaranteed, bugger you. We're going to say we've got our own political agenda. Our agenda is the voice. Our agenda is a republic. We're running our agenda. We don't care about any politician, any viewer. We're running our... And they were sticking their thumbs up at us. I think the ABC's performance on that coronation was intentional, it was deliberate, it was arrogant, it was offensive. And how dare they get upset that they then stir up the hornet's nest they tried to stir up. So it's their whole attitude to this is they are so far above everyone else that they can do whatever they like, they can run whatever agenda they like, whatever editorial they like. The rest of us have to sit down, shut up and go away.
Yeah, it's like they're arbitrarily selecting what to be outraged about. Sophie, what are your thoughts on these politicians, quite prominent politicians, telling their experience of abuse? And I know, as a journalist, you often are on the receiving end of a lot of abuse. Sometimes that's abuse that's directed your way by the ABC communications unit, tagging you in tweets and using social media almost as a weapon.
Well, Jack, anyone who's on social media and is in the media often gets a pile on. It's not a new thing. The irony of this is Stan Grant is not on social media and he's still getting abusive comments. But yes, as much as journalists shouldn't talk about themselves, the ABC Communications Department would regularly tag me with glee in posts up until early last year, and I would get a pile on and be trolled. So they're a bunch of hypocrites. They have stopped doing that now. I've called them out on this, but they're sitting there in Ultimo telling everyone how to behave, and that's the way their communications team has operated in the past. So shame on them, but trolling is not a new thing. It's something that doesn't seem to be able to be stopped. And I suggest to people, perhaps don't look at social media. I don't look at half the trash that's written about me. It's boring and people need to get a life. So I don't know why people waste their time looking at this.
Oh. Is there no mediation? Is there no one editing or mediating the comments part of ABC pages? That's what I don't understand.
Well, and I think that's Sarah Henderson's point. She is asking for comments to be turned off because ABC viewers appear to be so vitriolic when a Conservative dares show their face on their ABC that they get abused. It's really interesting.